Okay, excellent. So let's start. We're going to talk today about news. We're going to talk about vocabulary related to news. Yeah. Um, so here we have some topics in some vocabulary we will talk about. And let's first listen to um let's listen to an audio that has some news. Second. Okay, so let's listen.
Unit 6. What's the real story? Lesson A. Page 46. Exercise 5. Broadcast News. Part A. Listen to an early morning news broadcast. What is each story about? Write the correct number. 1,
It's 7 o'clock and time for the news. First, this just in from the World Health Organization, or WHO. WHO has reported that the global epidemic of tuberculosis, also known as TB, is not as widespread as it was in the past. However, although the number of cases of TB has been decreasing worldwide, this disease is still a problem. According to a recent study, about 1/4 of all known TB cases are untreatable because of new drug-resistant strains of the disease. The drugs previously used to treat TB are simply not working on those strains. WHO has been developing new drugs to combat the problem, and they have an international program to educate people about the dangers of TB.
2,
And now we have a report on a scandal involving famous 19th century painter Vincent van Gogh and one of his most famous paintings, Sunflowers, completed in 1888. The painting was bought by a large multinational corporation for several $1 million in 1987. At that time, a scandal erupted in London over the authenticity of this painting, with many critics claiming that the painting was a forgery. After years of debate, 2 experts from the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam finally authenticated the painting, stating that it is indeed a genuine Van Gogh.
3,
Next, we go to Mexico, where a hurricane pounded Cancun and nearby areas last night, leaving many people homeless. The strong winds and heavy rains made for horrible conditions. Floods and landslides destroyed homes and cars, especially in the beachfront areas. Rescue operations are particularly difficult because streets are blocked, in most cases, by mud. It's believed that some people are trapped inside their homes and cannot get out. Most people have left their homes and are now safely in temporary shelters. Mexican authorities predict that the disaster is going to have a huge impact on the tourist business in the area this year.
4,
And finally, a story for all you parents out there. How often do your kids push you to your limit? And what do you do about it? One tired and harassed mother from Illinois decided she'd had enough yesterday. Instead of yelling at her children as she normally would, she decided to leave. She walked out the door and climbed a tree. The tree with her children's treehouse in it, that is. She told her children she had decided to stay in their treehouse until they started appreciating her more. She put a sign in front of the treehouse that said, "On strike. No cooking, cleaning, doctoring, banking, or driving until demands met." The children tried to persuade her to come down, but were unsuccessful. Finally, one of them had the smart idea of baking their mother's favorite treat, brownies. Well, they must have smelled good because that did the trick. Mom agreed to come down and read the contract her children wrote, promising not to fight, along with other promises of good behavior. That's it for now. We'll be back in an hour with more news.
Hmm. Okay, so some of the vocabulary that she talked about four different news. An epidemic, which an epidemic would be number one, right? Number one, an epidemic. What was the second story she talked about? Number one is an epidemic. And the second story?
Scandal.
Sorry?
Scandal.
A
Scandal.
scandal. Yeah, good. What was the third thing? Which was number three?
Natural disaster.
Very well. A natural disaster in Mexico. Number four, it's an unusual family event. Okay, in some of the vocabulary that we hear here are written here. So we have first the word drugs. You know what drugs means in this context? What is the meaning of drugs? What is the meaning of drugs, Gusli, in this context? Are we talking about bad drugs or Nubia, what do you think is the meaning of drugs in this context?
It could be medicine.
Exactly. In this case, drugs means medicine. I think is I don't like this word. I mean, on one hand, it makes sense, right? Um, all medicine, all kinds of medicine are drugs. Yeah, all kind of medicine are drugs. Yes, that's true. But we use this word more for illegal drugs, right? So I think that it's better to use medicine, but Americans see drugs like a lot. In fact, they also use drugstore. Drugstore, yeah. Como farmacia. TB, do you know what TB means? They're talking about not TV, but TB. What is the meaning of TB? It's a kind of disease. It's a disease. What do you think, Dante? What do you think TB means?
Como el activo que usan las medicinas.
In this case, it's a disease. It's a sickness. TB is tuberculosis. Tuberculosis, right? This is you say TB, tuberculosis. Okay, so they're talking about tuberculosis and they're talking about the strains of tuberculosis. Strains, like just we had in COVID-19, there were different kinds of strains, right? There were uh, the alpha, beta, delta, in different kinds of strains from a COVID-19. So the strains are the different varieties of the virus, yeah, varieties of the virus. Son las variedades, son las cepas de un virus, the strains. They talk about the WHO. Hablan también en la noticia de WHO. What is the WHO? What do you think, guys, is the WHO? What do you think, Gusli, is WHO? These are this word they are the initials of an organization. Reina, ¿qué significa WHO?
Normalmente, o lo que, porque
Sorry,
creo que eso significa como otra cosa, ¿no?
¿qué cosa?
El de quién, quién.
Ajá.
Pero no creo que se
No,
refiera a eso.
estas son siglas. What do
It's
you
World Health Organization.
Exactly. Very well. World Health Organization. Es la OMS, ¿no? En español decimos OMS, Organización Mundial de la Salud. In English is the World Health Organization. That's the WHO, ¿ya? The WHO. De hecho, no diríamos WHO, sería WHO, para no confundir con WHO, ¿ya? World Health Organization, Organización Mundial de la Salud, ¿ya? Okay, now in the next story, they're talking about the Vincent van Gogh Sunflowers painting. And they said that a company bought it, right? But that this looked like it was a, and here we have the word.
Girasoles.
Uh-huh. Yes, the sunflowers. You know, I saw this work of art, and I think some feminists, yo vi este cuadro, y ese mismo día unas feministas lanzaron sopa de tomate a la pintura. And yeah, that happened one day. Okay, so they said the next word, forgery. You know forgery?
Falsificado. Casi.
Sorry?
Falsificación. Falsificado.
Falsificación, exactly. So they say it could be a forgery. The next story, they talk about floods and landslides. Pero lo escribí mal. Landslides. So, who can tell me what is the meaning of floods? Guzli, what is the meaning of floods?
Sorry, ¿me preguntó a mí, teacher?
Yes.
Ok, es floods como... Ay, se me fue. ¿Inundación?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Floods es inundación. Exactly. And they also talk about landslides that happen in Mexico. What is landslides?
Derrumbe.
¿Deslave?
Deslave. Correct. Exactly. Es un deslave. They're talking about these two catastrophes that happen because of the hurricane in Mexico. Finally, in the last story, they say some children they behave bad. Los niños se portaron mal, right? And in order to make it up for her mom, make it up for quiere decir como compensarla o compensar lo que hicieron, ¿no? Make it up for. In order to make it up for what they did, they prepare her favorite treat. La palabra treat se refiere a un bocadillo o un dulce, un postre, algo que te guste. Yeah? A treat is a kind of snack, but it's more like something you prepare. A treat eso sería como un antojito, podríamos decir. That's a treat. Okay, so now that you know these words, pay attention to these words as we play the audio. And now we are going to answer which of the events are true or false. Te vamos a prestar atención y prestar atención al vocabulario también que está que acabamos de analizar. Okay, so
Unit 6. What's the real story? Lesson A. Page 46. Exercise 5. Broadcast news. Part A. Listen to an early morning news broadcast. What is each story about? Write the correct number. 1.
It's 7 o'clock and time for the news. First, this just in from the World Health Organization, or WHO. WHO has reported that the global epidemic of tuberculosis, also known as TB, is not as widespread as it was in the past. However, although the number of cases of TB has been decreasing worldwide, this disease is still a problem. According to a recent study, about 1/4 of all known TB cases are untreatable because of new drug-resistant strains of the disease. The drugs previously used to treat TB are simply not working on those strains. WHO has been developing new drugs to combat the problem, and they have an international program to educate people about the dangers of TB.
2.
And now we have a report on a scandal involving famous 19th century painter Vincent van Gogh and one of his most famous paintings, Sunflowers, completed in 1888. The painting was bought by a large multinational corporation for several $1 million in 1987. At that time, a scandal erupted in London over the authenticity of this painting, with many critics claiming that the painting was a forgery. After years of debate, 2 experts from the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam finally authenticated the painting, stating that it is indeed a genuine Van Gogh.
3.
Next, we go to Mexico, where a hurricane pounded Cancun and nearby areas last night, leaving many people homeless. The strong winds and heavy rains made for horrible conditions. Floods and landslides destroyed homes and cars, especially in the beachfront areas. Rescue operations are particularly difficult because streets are blocked, in most cases, by mud. It's believed that some people are trapped inside their homes and cannot get out. Most people have left their homes and are now safely in temporary shelters. Mexican authorities predict that the disaster is going to have a huge impact on the tourist business in the area this year.
4.
And finally, a story for all you parents out there. How often do your kids push you to your limit? And what do you do about it? One tired and harassed mother from Illinois decided she'd had enough yesterday. Instead of yelling at her children as she normally would, she decided to leave. She walked out the door and climbed a tree. The tree with her children's treehouse in it, that is. She told her children she had decided to stay in their treehouse until they started appreciating her more. She put a sign in front of the treehouse that said, "On strike. No cooking, cleaning, doctoring, banking, or driving until demands met." The children tried to persuade her to come down, but were unsuccessful. Finally, one of them had the smart idea of baking their mother's favorite treat, brownies. Well, they must have smelled good because that did the trick. Mom agreed to come down and read the contract her children wrote, promising not to fight, along with other promises of good behavior. That's it for now. We'll be back in an hour with more news.
Okay, so now we hear the stories again. Maybe you notice some of the words. Let's see. Number one. Please, can you help me read, Dante, the question? Okay, the question one and two, and you tell me if they are true or false, please.
Yes. More people are suffering from TV than even before. I think it's true. And standard TV drugs are ineffective in about 1/4 of cases. I think that's true.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very well. Thank you. Nubia, please, three and four.
Yes, teacher. The painting Sunflowers was per, per, purchased
Purchased.
by a large company. The high price paid for the painting caused a scandal. I think that three is false and four is true.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very well. No, sorry, Reina, please, five and six.
Okay. The hurricane has trapped some people in their homes. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Tourists in the area hit by a hurricane will not be affected. Is false.
Okay. Tourism in the area hit by the hurricane will not be affected. Okay. And okay, number seven, the mother left the house to give her children freedom. That is false. Why did she leave the house? Why did she leave the house? What do you think, guys? What did you hear in the audio? Why the mother left the house and she climbed a tree? Want to listen again to that part?
3. The tree with her children's treehouse and whatness in the area this year. Most people have left their homes and are now safely.
Here, listen, please.
4.
And finally, a story for all you parents out there. How often do your kids push you to your limit? And what do you do about it? One tired and harassed mother from Illinois decided she'd had enough yesterday. Instead of yelling at her children as she normally would, she decided to leave. She walked out the door and climbed a tree. The tree with her children's treehouse in it, that is. She told her children she had decided to stay in their treehouse until they started appreciating her more. She put a sign in front of the treehouse that said, "On strike. No cooking, cleaning, doctoring, banking, or driving until demands met." The children tried to persuade her to come down, but were unsuccessful. Finally, one of them had the smart idea of baking their mother's favorite treat, brownies. Well, they must have smelled good because that did the trick.
So why did she leave the house and she climbed the tree? Why did she leave and climb the tree? Did you catch anything, Nubia, Dante? What is the reason the mom left?
Because she wants to give a lesson to her children.
Exactly. She says she wrote a sign that said on strike. On strike sería como en huelga. Yeah. So she wouldn't do anything until they appreciated her more. And number 8 says the children used food to get their mom down the tree. This is true, right? Her favorite treat. Okay, very well. So we learned a lot of vocabulary in this part. Let's check now these. We have these vocabulary that it can be used in the news. Usually in the news, you hear things like these, right? They're more common or less common, but let's check them. We have epidemic, 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 and we also have the word pandemic, right? Una epidemia, digamos, no es tan seria o tan grave como una pandemia, right? So we have the word epidemic and we have the word pandemic, all right? And this was very famous some years ago with the COVID and that thing. The next one is famine. Famine. What do you think is the meaning of famine? Okay, some words are really hard to see, right? What do you think is the meaning of
Hambruna.
famine? Hambruna. Exactly. Famine. Famine. That is hambruna. Okay, the next one, hijacking. Hijacking. What do you think is hijacking?
Terrorismo.
Well, similar. Hijacking means is to, bueno, lo que pasa es que kidnap es secuestrar, ¿no? Hijacking es secuestrar un avión, un medio de transporte. It can be related to terrorism, pero es eso, secuestrar un vehículo o un avión, un barco. Yeah, hijacking. Kidnapping. Kidnapping. What is kidnapping?
Secuestro.
Secuestro, kidnapping. You know, it's interesting. We have the word kit y nap. Ya hemos visto en clase que es nap, right? So what does kidnapping mean? Literally.
I don't know, teacher.
Okay, again, what is kid? What is nap? So kidnapping. Does it make sense? What is the meaning of kid? What is the meaning? O sea, si kidnapping es secuestrar. Lo que yo quiero que vean es cómo
Niño nap siesta.
es como, ajá, hacer que un niño duerma la siesta, right? In many movies, you have kids who are, I mean, the way you can kidnap a person is by using some chemicals that would make them sleep, right? O sea, algunos químicos que los pongan a dormir. Entonces, bueno, de ahí puede venir la palabra kidnapping. Okay, then we have natural disaster, political crisis, rebellion, or coup, un golpe de estado. Coup. A recession, robbery, scandal. So which of these is the most common in our country where you live? Which of these is the most common in your country, like in the news? Reina, which do you think is the very common news?
Here, the most common is a natural disaster. For
Sorry?
example, natural disaster.
Okay, natural disaster, yeah.
The last week, there were some fires in the mountains. Is the most common.
Like in Acapulco, right? We heard some months ago. It was terrible. Yeah. Which other one is common, Nubia? So Reina mentioned natural disasters. Which other one is common?
I think that the most common is robbery. Also in our towns, in our city, we hear about that.
Which other one is common, Dante? Where we live?
Political crisis.
Yeah, political crisis. Exactly. now there is very polarized, right? But you know, this is like a phenomenon in many countries, United States too, something that is called polarization. Now the country is very divided. I mean, it's always been, uh, but you hear like there's people who love AMLO, there's people who hate AMLO. In United States, there are two important parties too, right? Republicans, Democrats, and they also like have total opposite ideas, right? And they are always the same, right? Democrats are like global expansionist, and Republicans are more local and America first, etc. Now they say that it's a problem because polarization, la polarización de las de los de bueno en la política, it's causing like many people to fight against each other. Now there are more problems because the idea of one party, it's completely different to the other party, you know? They are not like moderates. Cada vez hay menos partidos moderados como en Estados Unidos y en Europa. Um, so now many people have like a few options to choose. And one of those options is either too radical or the other option is too radical too. Como que ahora ya las opciones son totalmente radicales. Tienes una opción radical para votar y otra opción radical también para votar. Y ya no hay una opción moderada. In Germany, I was reading, for example, that they have a new party now. All the conservatories or all the moderate parties are gone, and now there is a party. Hay un partido que está tomando mucha fuerza, que es como el de Boris Johnson, where they will leave the European Union. So Germany is thinking about leaving the European Union. Entonces, si Alemania se va de la Unión Europea, prácticamente no hay Unión Europea, porque Alemania es la de las más importantes de la Unión. Yeah. So it's something that everyone now is more divided. I think that is a problem because that causes confrontation, right? Because if the ideas of the party that I vote for, las ideas del partido que yo voto son diferentes a las del partido que tú votas, entonces hay más problemas porque ahora las ideas son tan diferentes que eso conlleva que haya los protestas, en muchos casos los golpes de estado, ¿no? But yeah, it's something very interesting, you know, now the ideas are very radical. Um, and I think that this is really bad because we are in a world right now that has problems with wars. Estamos en un mundo que tiene problemas con las guerras. And there is no strong country or strong politician that can control these things, right? Nadie parece que puede evitar estas guerras. Nadie puede hacer nada por resolver. And that's so bad. So let's see. What are some news from Mexico? For example, there are lots of news about drug dealers in Mexico.
En México hay
Okay, Okay, let's watch this news.
Now, the
They're
synthetic
from like Mexican American news.
opioid fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin and is responsible for tens of thousands of overdose deaths in the US last year. Police in America have told the BBC the public health crisis is comparable to a modern-day crack epidemic. Will Grant sent this special report and a warning it contains some distressing images.
There are no quiet nights for Tijuana's fire brigade. Called out to a local bar, there's no blaze here. But as some of the only available paramedics, they're tackling another crisis sweeping the city like wildfire: fentanyl. These two men, their lives fast slipping away, may not have even known they were taking it. Cheap and highly addictive, Mexico's drug cartels now cut it into recreational drugs like cocaine. The paramedics administer Narcan, the most effective drug to reverse a fentanyl overdose. If, that is, it's not already too late.
Fentanyl overdoses are now simply part of daily and nightly life in Tijuana, part of the fabric of a city descending fast into the grip of a full-blown drug epidemic. Yet it's a crisis whose very existence has been denied by the country's president.
Having claimed Mexico neither produces or consumes fentanyl, President López Obrador now says he'll introduce a new law to make taking fentanyl illegal. People on Tijuana's front lines fear that's too little, too late. Last year, the State Forensic Service found a staggering 1 in 3 bodies in the city's morgue contained fentanyl. Preven Casa, a harm reduction centre and needle exchange, say Tijuana is awash with it. They tested 4 randomly selected used syringes and vials. Each one was positive for fentanyl.
Fentanyl exists. To suggest otherwise fails to recognise this reality. We have the evidence right here, and in all the overdoses and deaths from fentanyl that we see. Ignoring the problem won't solve it. On the contrary, people will keep dying.
In the United States, the biggest illegal drug market in the world, fentanyl is now a nationwide crisis. Coast to coast, border to border, US cities are increasingly in its vice-like grip. The drug claimed 70,000 lives in 2022 alone. Not all victims were regular drug users. In El Paso, in Texas, Elijah Gonzalez was 15, studious and sporty when he accidentally overdosed on 1 pill of the widely available prescription drug Xanax. He had no idea, but it was a counterfeit fentanyl-laced pill from Mexico. It was his first time experimenting with drugs, with his best friend and his best friend's sister. Within a year, all 3 had died the same way. 3 lives snuffed out by fentanyl.
You know, a lot of parents tell me, oh, my son is in football, my son's in band, and my son's not in that crowd. I'm like, well, neither was mine. And I had no idea. So I think it starts at home. It starts in the school system. I mean, just all the way around.
Are you angry at Elijah?
No, I'm not angry. I've never been angry. Not even at the person that gave my son drugs. I forgave her. I'm just angry that it happened to me. I'm angry at just the situation itself.
El Paso sits just over the border from Ciudad Juarez, one of Mexico's most dangerous cities. In Juarez, I met Kevin, a 17-year-old drug trafficker and cartel hitman. He showed me how his gang uses tunnels to smuggle fentanyl across the US border. I asked Kevin if he felt any remorse over the deaths of US teens like Elijah.
No, it's all part of a chain. It's like the guns. They send weapons south, we send fentanyl north. Everyone's responsible for their own acts.
Hey, wake up!
Back in Tijuana, it took 3 doses of Narcan, but the paramedics brought 1 man back from the brink. His friend, however, died right there on the barroom floor. His mother arrived to devastating news. Her son is another victim of this potent narcotic, his death a footnote in the polarized debate over the US-Mexico border. Will Grant, BBC News, Tijuana.
Yeah, that's terrible. You know, there's a terrible crisis in the United States because they love drugs. Let's be true. From the beginning, the United States is addicted to drugs. They blame it on Mexico, but they don't control what happens in their own country, you know? Okay, Mexico sends drugs to the United States, but they don't have any politics that prevent people from falling into these drugs or fighting against them. Uh, I mean, there are sellers in United States, right? So they must do something about it. But yeah, it's something really sad. And you actually don't hear, at least not where I live, I don't hear about many cases from people I know who like drugs. But you go to the United States and it's like everyone at university, even politicians, you know that they found this news uh, from the UK uh, Parliament. En el Parlamento del Reino Unido, they found like I think 6 out of 10 restaurants had rest of cocaine. 6 de cada 10 baños tenían cocaína, restos de cocaína en el Parlamento británico. That means the most important politicians, the decision makers of the country, los que toman decisiones de ese país, las personas más poderosas, influyentes del país, they are into those things. Se meten esas cosas, you know. It's so, I think the word is so hypocritical, ¿no? A mí me parece el mundo también un poco hipócrita en ese aspecto. But the problem is that it affects, okay, if affects some persons, some kind of people who have the opportunity to search for rehabilitation. Algunas personas tienen los medios para poder lidiar con la situación, poder entrar a rehabilitación. But when it reaches you in the poverty, cuando estás en un estrato social bajo, es muy peligroso porque no puedes conseguir el tratamiento que necesitas, la atención médica. Y si hay una crisis, también es muy probable bueno, pueda ser demasiado tarde. And this is something that it's a real problem, you know, because the fentanyl, the drug they're talking about here, they just need a little doses, like the fentanyl just need a little. Es como, no me acuerdo cuánto, pero es como muy poquito lo que te puede matar. Y solo con la primera dosis. So and it's more powerful than cocaine, mucho más poderosa que la cocaína. So it's something that it's really sad, you know, about the world. What else can we say about the news? Bueno, casi siempre son noticias malas, ¿no? Si yo voy, por ejemplo, y yo busco news, me van a aparecer las guerras que están apareciendo, o política, o noticias tontas, como de este tipo. There is war, cerca de guerra, Iran, Putin, yeah, NATO. It's all bad news, right? Something very discouraging. Okay, so now I would like to ask each other the next questions. Number 1, Reina, can you please ask this question to Nubia?
How closely do you follow the news? What kinds of stories interest you?
Well, I am not closely about the news because they are bad news. It causes me how do you say ansiedad? Anxious?
Anxiety.
Excited?
Sí, a mí también a veces
Excited.
ya no quiero ver noticias porque nada más me enojo.
Yeah, me too. For that, I don't follow the news, and I like if I am interested in some kind of news are about cultural events, and that I think that's the news that that make me happy, and also when people help other people. Solidarity.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
solidarity.
And that's all.
Okay. Nubia, can you ask question 2 to Rain?
Yes. Reina, what do you think was the most important news story in the last few years?
Ay, perdón. I think the most important news is about politics. Everything politicians do,
¿Tratos?
tratos, los tratados.
Ajá, you can say the, también se dice treats.
Treat, algo así estaba en mi cabeza, pero no me sé la pronunciación. The treat between countries, the fights between governments, that.
Okay, do you think stories about sports or celebrities count as real news? I don't think so. I think this is like trash news. I don't follow real celebrities. For me, it's like if Justin Bieber cheated on his wife, no, on his girlfriend, it's like why do I care? O sea, ¿qué me importa si que me informen si Justin Bieber engañó a su novia o su esposa? And it's like, you know, I think there are very important news, and I don't think they count as real news.
No, those are the scandals, the gossip.
Gossips, exactly, gossips. Yeah. All right. Well, we're almost done with this lesson. Tomorrow we will continue. Thank you so much for joining and have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you, teacher. Goodbye.
Bye.
Take care.